And welcome, Mike, to Summer Lane. Thank you very much. This will be a unique opportunity because it's the first time I understand that we're having a Q&A session with a portfolio lead.
Could be the last.
So I think what we need to do then is just move on and ask on the agenda. Do we have any apologies? Helen?
Councillor Sadak Nia and Councillor Narinda Kuna.
Okay.
Also, Councillor Amo Hussain and Josh Owen.
And Councillor Alan Taylor.
Are there any declarations of interest? I see none, so we'll move on. Item 4 then is the opening statement from the portfolio lead for transport.
Thank you, Chairman. I have the number of apologies isn't because I'm being here, but there we are. As you say, I'm the new boy on the block, and you've heard to my colleague Ian Ward, who knows more about this portfolio than I ever will, I guess. But having said that, roles change, and here we are. So the priorities continue to be the improving and reliability of public transport services, ensure the continuation of bus routes in the light of the funding pressures that we're feeling. Completing rail and metro infrastructure delivery and improving walking and cycling infrastructure for the region, ensuring the road network operates efficiently. Unlike perhaps some of the officers of the Transport for West Midlands, I keep telling them there is a place for the car. Because that's what I drive. And as a result, it is not everybody's wish to be on public transport, but in actual fact, all transport policies, in my view, should take account of the large population that do commute by vehicles, cars that is, and also look at where the bus services are operating in the rural areas where they tend to be a little bit sparse. So moving on from that, we are supporting the delivery of the innovative transport solutions across the West Midlands, including hydrogen buses, which I'm a fan of, or hydrogen vehicles in general. I think the electrical infrastructure that we have does not cater for the amount of vehicles that are being pushed that way. And furthermore, the Midlands Rail Hub and EV charging infrastructure, which needs to be improved dramatically. The emerging programme of investment through the CRSTS and long-term planning through the LTP regional safety strategy and other policies will help to deliver a better connected and greener West Midlands. There is, as we all know, a substantial problem with funding and central government need to attack that. We already know there have been some high-level negotiations with Network Rail and, of course, National Express, because their wish to reduce the services has been a bit of a problem, and as a result, the Mayor had to intervene personally. We are now, at the moment, overseeing a reduction in public transport, which is something we have to reverse, and as a result, I have said to all of the leaders that because we have not been funding transport properly in recent years, or in many years, that this year we should see a 2% increase in the levy, and from there on year, to enable us to stabilise the transport situation, but that comes at a cost. And as a result, local authorities have to appreciate that having a cash flat budget is not good, and we have to cater for the next 5 years at least a plan which will enable us to invest in public transport and, whenever possible, bring forward new routes. But other than that, to subsidise what we have at present to make sure there is no reduction in service. So that's my plan, so I'm told. But having said that, I think there is, without doubt, a big problem with transport in the region. To have a connected transport system is something we all like to see, but at this point in time, it is a little bit disjointed.
Thank you very much.
Morning.
I should have said at the beginning, I'm very grateful to the Chair Overview and Scrutiny for the opportunity to be observing how they operate their Q&A, which quite clearly covered everything else but transport So this is our opportunity of asking how transport should go forward. And Councillor has indicated we're looking for a 5-year plan for public transport, and that will be at a cost, it's not there. So we've got a list of prepared questions, Mike, that we're going to go through. And the first one is the new local transport plan. Councillor Hyatt.
So good morning and thank you very much for being here. You've inherited the local transport plan core strategy, and now up for discussion is the four area strategies: Backcountry, Birmingham, Solihull, Coventry. I mean, I can speak for Wolverhampton, where we are quite different in many ways from the areas that we've been grouped with within the Black Country. But it is an opportunity to set out an approach. It is an opportunity to look at local place-based solutions for what needs to be done in order to get us there. Can you give us an indication of what you hope to see in those area strategies? You said that you want to see equal weight given to the car. You said that you support hydrogen because, in the iteration that I saw, hydrogen wasn't mentioned, although I know it will play a significant part in our public transport with regard to buses. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us about how you see that developing?
Yes, I mean, developing the local transport package is a statutory requirement, the responsibility of the West Midlands Combined Authority. We've now renamed that to Reimagining Transport in the West Midlands, and we've been comprised of multiple parts, a core strategy and 6 big moves, 4 area strategies and an implementation plan. It set out a high ambition for change in transport system with an emphasis on increasing public transport, walking and cycling. It also embraces the many positive changes which provide benefits for car users, including supporting zero emissions. As I said earlier, I'm not a fan of electric. I think it is something that will be here today and gone tomorrow because the infrastructure isn't there, and the costs of getting rid of those batteries or replacing them if you've got an electric car could be cost prohibitive. I believe this point in time, and it's a legacy from my previous portfolio holder, that the investment in hydrogen is the right thing to do. We've seen hydrogen buses on the road, and that was an integral part of the original transport plan. It's continued going forward, which also leads to opportunities of hydrogen filling stations. I think there's one being localised in water, and the move towards that kind of transport, in my view, will be far more acceptable and probably far more efficient. Sustainable transport ambition of the LTP is directly driven and required by the wider agreed policy strategies of the region, which is the Plan for Growth West Midlands 2041. Reading from his notes, it turns over. We have obviously opportunities from the money coming into the region, yet to be finalised as to what that would be, but that could present new opportunities for that money to be invested both in buses, trains and indeed any other form of transport. Once more, putting on the table, I'm not a fan of electric scooters. I think they are dangerous, and to be fair, you need to know the areas that you will, should you wish to be supported, you'll find that I'll be at odds with you. But I do believe there are some great opportunities for public transport. We have to understand that many people require that public transport to get about, not just for leisure, but also for work. And as a result, we have to have routes that service those areas of employment. And those areas of employment will change. They will change as the local plans get developed, and the local plans for housing and indeed industrial land may very well need that we have to put pressure on the transport authorities to enable people to have that walk to work or drive to work or even public transport to work opportunities. So there is a big hill to climb, and not least of all the gap in funding, which is a bigger hill than most. But at the end of the day, that is part of the strategy, as I said earlier, a 5-year plan to enable all local authorities to contribute their share towards the public transport.
To come back.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I mean, there's an evolution in the use of public transport. It's been used more at weekends than prior to COVID. But you've also got an evolution that not all roads lead to Rome. People don't need to go centre. I mean, you're right, as you're sort of using the car, people are more prepared to go across the spokes of the wheel rather than actually down to the centre. Does that mean that you're looking to see a change in bus routes perhaps to more reflect where people need to go? Or are you saying bus routes that need to be integral to how we plan the future, both where we place our industries and where we place our housing?
I think it's a mixture of both, really. The initial bus routes now may not be fit for purpose, and there will be changes as the demographics show whether or not they're being supported. But there is no doubt that when we look at planning applications from a local authority point of view, we have to take into account, and I think that TFWM should be a statutory consultee. They're not, but I think we should have their input into all major planning applications which show housing and or commercial space being proposed by any local authority. Because otherwise we get a situation where everybody has to drive to work, and that, of course, negates the policies that we've got. But I think the emerging plan, without any shadow of a doubt, and I know that Anne's making note of it because I can see through my right-hand eye that she's writing it down. I think it's imperative that TFWM have an input to all of the major planning applications. It's specifically with the amount of housing that we are now being told we have to provide. But there will also be an opportunity, I think it's a strong opportunity. We have to go back to the bus providers who are saying some of the routes are non-profitable, and that would have meant around about 40 to 50% of the bus routes that they operate not being here unless we intervene from TFWM with the mayor. And I think it's important to understand that we can't be held to ransom by that particular situation.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Did I see your hand, Martin?
Chair, do you mind if I
Can you press your button?
you mind if I bring my supplementary forward to here because it flows?
It's up to you. Can you use your button? Yeah. Okay.
This is about what's your view on using micro, not as in scooters, but micro as in the way the Americans used to do minibuses to provide connections to straighter long-term, spoke routes, which would give us the opportunity of having more connectivity and also more patronage on the major services.
I think one of the criticisms I hear on a regular basis is that the buses are not full. There are many of them empty. So I think this opportunity is not what I've looked at. But, the last time I looked at something like this was Paris People Carrier back in the 1990s, where, we had a small bus that was kinetically driven. Probably a good idea of the day, but it was then put on the table as to whether we could use these within centres, in actual fact, where you could have small amounts of passengers being moved from one place to another. Not everybody could walk down to the bus station, and not every bus goes into the bus station. I can speak to that from Warsaw's point of view. So I think there's an opportunity there. But of course, it is a matter of capital cost and getting a partner on board to enable that to be considered. I think it's something else that, we need to look at. Are the big buses that we have the transport of the day, or should we look at something smaller?
Yeah, I think we've got a little bit of that around Coventry and parts of Solihull. So it'd be interesting to look back at that, see what benefits that's given.
I think that's true, and I think Coventry was very much a part of the scheme of this some considerable time ago now. Time flies when you join yourself. But I think we need to look at feedback, and that's a consultation to be had with the people in Coventry and also the officers of TFWM to see whether, in actual fact, that is a rollout that we should support. But I firmly believe that some of the larger buses now, which are common criticism, I said, I'm repeating myself, that they're not always full. And if they aren't full, surely it's got to be cost effective to look at small traffic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh. Thank you. Good morning, Mike. I'm interested that you started off by saying that you felt there's place for the car in the future. I very much I very much do agree with that, because there'll always be people who are not able, for various reasons, to move around on the public transport that might be available. But the local transport plan, the emerging local transport plan, was written very much in line with government policy at the time, which was pushing towards investment in infrastructure and public transport, making public transport more accessible and therefore used by more people. Almost hand in hand with that has gone challenges to the bus network, not just in the West Midlands, but nationally. And we've seen the loss of bus routes up and down the country. So you've got two things that seem to me to be opposed. You've got government policy pushing for investment in public transport infrastructure, and the operators of public transport struggling to make ends meet and reducing routes as a result. What I think we've seen recently is the beginning of a shift in government policy, and we may hear more from the Prime Minister later this week about this, whereby we seem to be moving away from the need to be emphasising greener transport methods and moving back towards greater support for people moving around in the car. So I wonder what your reflections are about the emerging local transport plan here for the West Midlands, and whether you feel that any changes might be needed that push the emphasis away from where it currently rests, which is very much on infrastructure investment. And indeed, government has indicated in the past that funding would be dependent upon such investment being made through the CRTS programme. But as I say, that might be changing. So I wonder what your thoughts are about the emerging transport plan and where you think we might be going.
Thank you again. Well, the minutes of the Housing and Land Board will tell you exactly where I'm going. My first comment was when the LTP was presented, well, where's the car? I said, there's something missing here. And the officer was looking at me, what's missing? I said, the car is missing. And, you know, that's a fact. Government made these decisions. If you look at Westminster, then I think you will agree that probably London Transport, and there is an integrated transport facility. You've got the underground, you've got the buses, you've got the boats if you want to go on the Thames. So therefore they're making decisions on what happens down there. And quite honestly, I've been opposed to the government policy on this for some considerable time. Nothing new there, as you will probably know. But I'm not frightened to speak out saying they've got it wrong. And they have got it wrong. You know, they're basing their funding models on what they see down in Westminster in London. Unfortunately, that's not replicated out here. And as a result, I think we need to revisit the LTP with the change of government policy now coming forward and see where in actual fact we now are looking to get that niche funding. If it means that we should be looking for other modes of transport other than where we've been pedalling, cycling and scooting, then quite honestly, you know, I'll be supportive of that. But I think before we start putting, in some cases, expensive alterations to road network, which, I mean, if you're only going to talk about the sprinting walls, then somebody love to get you a piece of rope, stick it around your neck because they don't want it. But having said that, you know, I was amazed a few weeks back, yeah, when I was in London, I was absolutely shocked the amount of cycles that were there. I felt it was quite dangerous. I thought I was happier in a cab. But I think that the shift in modes of transport is a personal choice. And as a result, I firmly believe, yes, government now are seeing that those people are not responding to the stick in the carrot. And I hope that we will see some change in government policy, which is well overdue.
Pick up a question because this is our opportunity to go deep. And I think of your comments, Mike, in terms of the hydrogen car. And I'm very mindful, when I had responsibility for transport, we were encouraged to consider electric technology and battery technology. And in Coventry, there's been a hydrogen car running around the city for 15 years. Coventry University have been developing this for some considerable time. So working in conjunction with the universities, how do you see hydrogen being expanded as we have been channeled down the electric? So, and I agree with you, by the way, that I think hydrogen is a fuel that we should be using.
Chairman, I go back to 1972 when I had the pleasure of driving a taxi around Birmingham for 10 years, and I was running on propane gas. And people used to say, bloody, have you got a tank of gas in the back of your car? Yeah. What happens if somebody hits you at the back? It could explode. Never did. Well, certainly not when I was driving it. But at the end of the day, I think the move to hydrogen, I didn't know you had one in Coventry for 15 years, but the battery technology was a knee-jerk reaction, in my view, that this was the way to go forward. But I think there are certainly world events which have not helped. Obviously, the components required and the minerals required to produce batteries is becoming scarcer as wars go on. People hold us to ransom over that. But certainly, I've said this in a jocular manner. It'd be great to turn on your tap in the kitchen and fill your car, but you know, what a way to go, because water is only hydrogen and oxygen at the end of the day. But I think as technology improves, hydrogen, I'm aware that Nissan have just issued the first hydrogen engine, I think. I'm told that BMW and Land Rover have been running on hydrogen for about 4 or 5 years. So it is only a matter of time when people realise that an inert gas like hydrogen, when exposed to the atmosphere, obviously isn't a danger, but more importantly, that it is, as the way of producing it develops to become cheaper, my overview is that I think that will become cheaper than doing batteries, and as a result, that people will be moved towards that technology. Can't speak for the second-hand car market, but at the end of the day, I do believe that that is the way forward, and I'd be interested to see from Transport for West Midlands what progress might be being made within transport areas of the increase of hydrogen production. The ease of hydrogen production, not only that, the cost of it. I think that's the important part about it. It all comes down to cost.
If I might, Peel University, Mike, is the place to look, because they've managed to run a pilot whereby they are fueling a community, I think, of 12,000 people by hydrogen, and they are generating the hydrogen through a large solar farm that they've developed. So that, I think, Peel University is a leading exponent of this in the country.
Great job today, Anne.
Thank you.
And it leads us nicely into the next question in terms of the green agenda. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you actually to the West Midlands Combined Authority, because actually you're the highest rank of all combined authorities in the latest study published by Climate Emergency UK. We've got a 65% score, so we're obviously going in the right direction. So that's fantastic, and I think it needs to be acknowledged, and thanks put that to you. Now, obviously we have heard change announcements from the Prime Minister. What do you think are going to be the impacts of that here in the West Midlands? And of course, the one thing when I looked at the local transport plan is you didn't have much about cars, and you've acknowledged that here, and especially EV chargers. Now, widening it out to hydrogen infrastructure too, we need to have that infrastructure around for cars, the future cars on the road, to be able to function. And as we see less and less of the diesel and petrol cars, what is the West Midlands Combined Authority's position, and how can we assist in developing those structures for the car user?
Well, the current position, as you can see, is to expand the infrastructure in EV. Maybe, you know, that may be the policy now, but I think that, in my view, I don't think that's the way forward. I firmly believe that we could be spending money for EV technology, which will become a bit of a white elephant. It's very much like, you're probably too young to remember, the Betamax and the VHS. You know, if you bought the wrong one, by Christ, you know, you were sitting there thinking, I wish I hadn't bought that. And I think certainly over the next 12 to 18 months, there will be a shift from EV. I read a report somewhere, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but there were supposedly 1,500 EV charges in London, and there's only 1,500 for the rest of the country. My next door neighbour had a Tesla delivered yesterday, and I said to him, I've got a charging point. Oh, he said, well, there's one so-and-so, one so-and-so. Well, that's great, but when you get there, it's either broken or there's a queue in front of you. And as a result, if you've got one at home, which in the building regulations say, yes, you should have one, and you can control it by an app, I'm told. But having said that, I still believe there is a lot of unanswered questions. And I ask the question to everybody who's a fan of EV, right, if you live in a block of flats, or if you live in London, you've got an electrical vehicle, you're on the 15th floor, how do you charge it? How do you charge it? If you've got a block of apartments, it's probably got, I don't know, 150, 200 people in there, and those have got a mixture of EV cars, there's only so many points you can have. There was a policy to roll out EV chargers, and what I found, certainly from the people I represent, oh, I don't want that outside my house. Well, why is that? It's got to be on the pavement. Yeah, I know that, but I know people park there all day. So there are some hurdles to get over. I think EV is here to stay. But having said that, I think it will be overtaken. We were all encouraged to go to diesel many years ago because it was cheaper. I did that. Now it's dearer, you know, and as a result, I think, as I said earlier, it's a matter of personal choice. But looking at all of the factors, and I watched the Panorama program on EV charging, and it wasn't very complimentary, to be honest. There's a guy who had an electric vehicle. It took him all day to get to somewhere where he could get it charged. Obviously, we as individuals have to make our own adjustments on that. But from the Transport Authority, I think we need to make sure that we have got a handle on it. And I think we are. There's a lot of unknowns yet, a lot of unknowns. And that's why I'm a fan of hydrogen, fan of any propellers really. I mean, I don't think they use electric for rockets, but they get to the moon, you know. So what do they use? I think, I don't know, not a scientist, but I think they use hydrogen cells. Maybe we should look at space.
You okay? Supplementary?
Yes, please. So basically what you said is how more tangibly will the West Midlands Combined Authority be able to assist in the rollout of these power stations, or having that infrastructure around? As you said, well, we want to expand EV charging at the moment, but we want to look at how are you actually going to do that? I mean, what would a person in the West Midlands expect to see, considering the constraints of putting it just on the pavements going to cause endless troubles of who owns it, how do you get, how do you police how long someone's there for? So how are you actually going to physically do it? What can people expect to see in the next few years?
I think what we have to do is couple up with the industry who are producing new vehicles and actually move with the times. If you like, we've got to lead by example. And if we can persuade that the investment in other technology than EV is available at the price that's affordable, I think we've got to start waving the flag. We're not very good at saying what we do well. And I think not just here, but the whole of the West Midlands Combined Authority, who sat with me on the Combined Authority a number of years, I used to say all the time, we never tell anybody what we're doing. You see something growing up out of the ground, but it doesn't say the Combined Authority made this happen. And if I was to ask everybody in this room, what have the Combined Authority achieved in the last X number of years, probably you'd struggle a bit because we don't tell anybody. I see a press release which I get to sign off. Oh, this is going to be done today. Oh, great, fine. Yeah, okay. But it is a matter of getting that message across. It's a matter of education, I think. At the moment, every time you turn on the television or you put the radio or whatever, it's electric vehicle, this electric vehicle, that. Call me a Philistine, but I don't think that will, in actual fact, encourage people to move away from what they're used to. The government are now seeing reason, perhaps it's because I've been telling them, I don't know. But diesel is going to be around for a lot longer than we thought. And I think that certainly the short answer to your question is we need to educate people and we need to be that leader of transport and use best technology. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. If somebody's using something else in the country that has proven beneficial and cost effective, then why don't we just transport that in? That's my view.
That's a lot.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's very interesting. Also, where in my ward, I visit a couple of new estates.
I think you said it's going to.
Well, it's a time, a couple of new estates, and I've noticed that a lot of the residents there have installed chargers for electric vehicles, and it is growing, You know, they're not trailing all on the pavement. They've got a drive, and then they can put their friend of mine. I'm not just telling everybody. I mean, I think Councillor Huxtable would know because he knows my ward as well. They just use. They've got the drive and they use the plug in the house to charge the car up. It can be encouraged, and I think, yes, I agree. You know, hydrogen, any form of cleaner transport or vehicle for driving is good, and it's a positive. And you know, I think it should be. You know, people consider both and investment in both for people for the West Midlands industry as a whole too.
Quite right, any new houses under the building regulations have to have an electric charging point whether you like it or not, and then you make it live if you buy that property. Not so long ago, the government used to give you a grant for doing it, but now they don't. And as a result, I think that was the incentive that many people used to actually install their own electric point retrospectively. But as I said, all new properties have to have an electric point. But I come back to the point, if you're in terrace property, how do you guarantee a parking spot outside your house to plug it in? I saw some innovative ways of drilling the pavement out in London and putting the wire under there, but you've got a duty of care as to anybody who's a pedestrian. But I think there's a place for all modes of transport. If your choice is electric, as I say, it's a personal choice. If your choice is diesel or petrol, or indeed hydrogen going forward, it is a matter of cost, reliability. And I don't know yet whether anybody can bring you a can of electric when you've broken down on the hard shoulder of the M6. I think there is some kind of technology the RAC and the AA have now, but it is a worry. And, you know, I think that it has to be a personal choice again, but you have to research exactly what you want. Most electric cars only do short journeys, fine. I think the average is 300 miles. You can do that, but you've got to make sure that you can do that. You've got to plan your journey so you can fill up 2 or 3 times if you're going from here to Scotland, for instance. But yes, I'm not ruling out electric. I'm just saying I'm not a fan of it, but I do think we've got something better around the corner.
There is hybrid as well, you know, have fuel and.
I could be tempted to a hybrid probably, because at least you got the backup. But when I had my propane car, at least if it ran out of gas, I could flick a switch and it went back to petrol. But you're right, that's an absolute valid point. Hybrid vehicles work, but they don't travel very far in electric. I think the average is about 30 miles.
I don't drive anywhere, but thank you.
You're not the boss. Martin.
Listening to your comments, it reminds me that a number of the automotive manufacturers are talking about the model of shared vehicle ownership, which means particularly for larger developments where the parking space and charging space is limited, that if people are sharing amongst maybe 10 people, it brings down the cost of the vehicle overall, and also means that they can book a car for when they need something that you can only do with a car. But it reduces the number of vehicles on the road, because many of our streets are choked with vehicles that spend 98% of their time parked.
Very true, very much like shared drives. If I could have £1 for every time I'd had somebody had a punch up with the bloke next door because of the shared drive, and quite honestly, you know, I'd be able to retire. That's a word I don't like. But you're right, I think there are all innovations coming forward, but it's like shared ownership in cars. It's never really got off the ground, but I certainly believe that sharing electric points on an estate would work. A communal place to park would be worthwhile looking at, and I think that's something that will happen under larger developments without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
I'm very
okay,
conscious
move on.
of time, please.
Okay.
I'm very conscious of a time because there are several questions left. Yeah, please.
Sorry, but I'm going to move on purpose. So I am conscious that really we've got about 12 questions, Mike, that we need to ask. So it's really 10 minutes a question. Okay. In the next section is on transport funding pressures and the funding gap itself. We are aware of the latest financial condition reported for the board in September, showing a gap of £28 million for 24-25, rising to 70 million by the end of the medium-term financial plan 5-year period. Given the current financial position and the pressures local authorities are facing, how might this impact the combined authorities' transport policies and the delivery of its capital projects?
Well, in actual fact, we're now looking through a change program for the CRSTS to look at ways on the capital side. From the revenue point of view, there is no doubt, as I said earlier, the local authorities, or 7 of the Mets, have to look at their paying their fair share for transport. It has to be within their budget. It has to be a 5-year plan. We look at a 2% this year, and next year it'll probably be 3%, rising over the next 5 years to enable us to narrow that gap. It is a big ask, and of course, some of the capital projects have overrun quite substantially because of inflation and the cost of materials. But we are looking with mitigation measures to rein that back. It may be that some schemes may have to be cancelled, but we hope not.
Any supplementaries?
Yes, thank you. I mean, that is fine. We are more concerned regarding the revenue budget, which is 28 million pound deficit, and all local authorities are in a very similar position. Now, you said in previous comments that if we have a good system, why don't we import and impose it here? So the best funding system and the best funding transport system is in London, in our country. And yet it seems that the higher echelon of our West Midlands Combined Authority so far failed to deliver on that.
So we found to deliver, we found to convince government that they're not funding it in the correct level that they should. And I think over the last number of years, all local authorities have had transport on the cheap. You know, and I can speak from my own authority, that nobody wants to pay for something that possibly many of them don't use. But having said that, I think we've now got to grasp the nettle and say your priorities have to be formulated. Where does transport figure in those priorities? And I think that the revenue budget can be tackled through the local authorities, but we have to put pressure on government for capital schemes to go forward, but we need to have the funding to do it. Local authorities are not in a position to do all of the schemes that everybody would like on their wish list. And we have to prioritise our budget like everybody else. But the funding gap, we are confident from the 151 officer saying that with mitigation measures and increasing the transport levy, it's not going to be settled overnight. It's going to be from 2024 onwards. We could be now, between now and 2024, we think we can balance the books. But from there on, it's going to be a difficult, turbulent time.
Just quickly.
Yeah, but by all means.
So with respect, we will be hammering and burdening up very people who elected us on transport levy, and we have cost of living crisis. So once again, we are hitting very ordinary people who are going through crisis. That's not the solution.
Well, I would possibly half agree with you there, but at the end of the day, cost of living crisis affects everybody. And as a result, you know, I hear it every day, but in actual fact, when I see some of the things that people don't take into account with regards to the cost of living crisis, then effectively there are better ways, and they have to adopt their lifestyle to suit what income they're coming in. It's the old story. If you've got, you know, it's Mr. McCall, isn't it? You know, income of £100, expenditure of £101, Mr. McCall was not very happy. Income of £100, spending 99, he's very happy. But at the end of the day, there is an issue where the people who are probably on the less paid are the people who will use public transport. But moving aside, I think the benefit system that we've got is not to encourage people to go to work. And as a result, you know, they can sit at home and probably earn more money than having to go to work. And I can understand that, because if you go to work and you've got cost of childcare and everything else that goes with it, but transport is at the heart of everybody's budget in relation to the 7 Mets. We have to say, can we afford to fund the transport system that everybody out there would like to see? Everybody wants a bus that passes their front door. I'm sorry, it's not going to work. You know, it doesn't happen. That kind of money is not available to us.
That's what.
I have to press, so here. The elephant in the room is that the bus network is deregulated and the money is taken out by operators for their shareholders. That's the elephant. That is the matter we have to grasp. And whereas, with respect, yourself and the mayor has failed so far to do that.
Good point. In actual fact, you're quite right. I go back to my good friend Mrs. Thatcher, who introduced deregulation of buses. And as a result, the commercialisation of any business is reliant upon the fare box paying back to the shareholders. And as a result, you're quite right. You know, I put the question back to you. If the elephant's in the room, what would you do?
So, sorry, Premise, you're not going to answer the question. This is the Q&A of the portfolio.
I'd like to
We're
answer.
going to have, no. Mike, you've been asked a question, you've given the answer, I intend to move on. Okay. Rail network is the next section. I've got Councillor Robert Houghton.
Mike, welcome to your opening statements. And then you touched on the Midlands Rail Hub. With the changes to the HS2, there's been press reports the government's going to now fully fund the Midlands Rail Hub using the budget previously allocated to the northern leg of HS2. What further information could you share with the committee regarding what projects sit within the confirmed funding for the Midlands Rail Hub? What's the likely delivery timescales?
I'm reading from what's written here, and I'll perhaps look at you from there on. The announcement I thought was a bit of a, in my view, I think whoever wrote the speech for the government to go to Manchester and tell them, by the way, while we're here, we're going to cancel your train, perhaps you ought to be on the train back. HS2, personally, you know, I ask you, I don't know whether you know this, Chairman, but HS2, if you were to go on HS2 in Manchester and you were to go all the way through to London, you were only 7 minutes in the open air, which I was shocked to hear. 7 minutes, the rest of it is tunnelled. And that's where the costs have gone, because MPs down in the south, oh, we don't want that bloody rail line here. We don't want that, it's a bit of a, you know, it's green belt and all that. And I'm afraid that the lobby from those people seems to have had effect on the Prime Minister. With regards to the hub, yes, we'll be looking at safeguarding what we've got at the present. We've got 2 stations in Darlaston and Willenhall, which are programmed, but those may have to be put back because of various cost pressures. But certainly, reading from the notes here, it says HS2 Phase 1 will be completed in full for both Euston and Odo Common Elizabeth Line connections. The Westminster Station at interchange NEC and Airport, Ardham Cross and Curzon Street, as well as to the junction with the West Coast Main Line at Handsacre, Port of Lichfield. Other proposed sections of HS2 will be scrapped with immediate effect. Midlands to East Midlands Parkway, Crewe to Manchester, HS2 East, which is West Midlands to East Midlands Parkway and Midland Main Line. In addition, all current safeguarding currently in place for those HS2 sections will be removed, and land purchased by HS2 will be resold, which quite honestly is going to be a bit of a controversy, I'm sure. This will make it extremely difficult to ever extend HS2 in the future. But with regards to the Midland Rail Hub, the Network North proposals include building the MRH in full, and there's a 1.75 billion allocated. The project will be subject to a full business case, planning and transport and works act order approvals. The listed figures do not include the delivery of new local stations. Due to the cancellation of HS2 East, it's expected that the West Midlands to East Midlands part of MRH will revert to delivering service enhancements to Tamworth, Derby, Nottingham, as well as to London and Leicester. And a public consultation exercise on the MRH project is likely to follow. Rail transport is very expensive. We have to deal with our partners of Network Rail, which of course aren't always the best, and of course the Coal Authority, both of which have an integral part in playing for any new infrastructure on rail.
I've got one follow-up if I can.
Yeah.
Yep. Just one follow-up. Thank you for that. Right. Do we know if it includes the costs of doing the capital coursework?
No, this lady will.
Yes.
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you. Wasn't in the notes.
Sorry.
Okay.
Couple of questions for me then, Mike, in terms of, I changed Coventry's position of opposition to HS2 because because nobody in their right mind from Coventry would go to HS2 at the airport and then catch the train HS2 to London. We've got a perfectly viable 3 trains an hour system. However, this is where it was relevant at Spencer. Originally, it was to be a link into Europe.
Yes.
And that was the important aspect, which seems to have got lost. And so I'd like your views on that. And I also want to pick up this point in terms of the land sale that is forthcoming, because without protecting the land that's needed, we will never ever be able to get a link between Birmingham and Manchester. So again, views on that and how do we protect land and how do we get into Europe? Thank you.
Certainly you're right, John. The original plan was, I think, the train was going to the centre of Paris. That they cut that short, which said to me then, okay, so you go on HS2, you get to London 15 minutes quicker. With all the expenditure, was I in favour of that? No. My opportunity was to say, if it's a matter of getting people to London in quantity, extend the platforms and put an extra carriage on. Simple, but there you go. But in relation to the land in question, I have to say that's going to be the most controversial issue going forward. There are many people whose businesses have been blighted and or extinguished because of the land purchase. And as a result, I think that how they dispose of that land is a question yet to be answered. Whether they'll go to auction, whether it'll be offered back to the people they purchased it on, I don't know. But certainly, I think the opportunity of getting hold of that land from a public authority point of view, with HS2 Limited, would no doubt then be put into liquidation sometime in the future, and whatever assets are left there will be, in my view, for the highest bidder.
So will you be supporting the protection of that land as inferred by the mayor at the combined authority?
The mayor can have his own opinion. I haven't seen the details yet. Will I be in a position to protect that land in any way, shape or form? Probably not, until I see the reasons for that protection. Whether that is purely on a transport point of view, or indeed on the back of what was promised, which is the regeneration of the areas where that train line would have gone. That was the thing, the only reason why I was thinking that HS2 might be a good thing. The short answer is, John, I don't know.
Intend moving on then to a question. Beg your pardon, Perez?
So my previous question, you mentioned late Mrs. Thatcher that she deregulated the buses, but she didn't deregulate it in London. Now, my question regarding HS2 is that to me, although I'm also from Coventry, it was bypassing Coventry, but it was good for our region and good for our country, because it was not only for speed, but it was about economic growth, about leveling up, creating employment, and building capacity, and taking cargo lorries off the roads onto trains. Now, the Prime Minister, when he cancelled and made a speech and cancelled HS2, he promised that a lot of funding will be going into Midland to keep Andy Street happy with his Midland Metro program. So how are you going to hold this government its feet to fire when they have once again neglected our region? Because as John said, from here to London, we are quite satisfied. From here to Manchester and Scotland is hopeless as far as the capacity is concerned, real capacity is concerned.
Well, at the end of the day, let's take it in stages. The Metro has been an expensive experiment. There's no doubt about that. It is a very expensive way of providing transport. The plan for the metro to go to Bridie Hill is still there to be fully funded. I understand that the government gave us some money towards that, Dudley contributing to it. Whether the metro will ever get to Walsall, probably not in my lifetime. You know, the 5W route is dead, long gone. It has had a beneficial effect in Birmingham. My view is that if we were to do an extension to the airport, I think that is certainly worthy. I can't speak for Andy Street's comments on what the Prime Minister says. I thought that, to be fair, we will be seeing money coming into the region for expansion of the rail network that we've currently got. But again, that is subject to the pressures of inflation and ground conditions, especially in the Black Country.
Yeah. So you said that macro has been very expensive, and I understand that, but it's crucial and essential for our region, for our economy, and for our people and communities. So, but don't you reckon the answer is with very light rail, which Coventry and Dudley and other authorities are pushing for it, and yet the government is once again dragging its feet to implement the whole process? Where is your input and your Metro Mayor's input in this? How are they going to help us?
I'm not here to speak for the mayor. He's got a big enough stature to speak for himself. With regards to very light rail, I know that is a concept which is being worked on by Coventry and Dudley. I've supported that once I understand the concept of it, but it's yet to be proven. Yet to be proven. It's still in its embryo stage, and the technology is yet to be proven that it works. If that can work on a normal rail track, then yes, I think it could go and be a way forward. But at this point in time, the concept is still in its technology stage, and I don't know yet as to whether that has got further traction since I last looked at it. Further traction is the word, but I do think it's a possibility. Integrated transport is about all forms of transport, and BLR will be part of it, I hope.
The next question is on the reliability of rail services, and again, this case law.
So I was nominated by my city council, by my leader from Coventry. Sorry. Oh, yeah. 2015, I was nominated to join I think it was Centro at that time, John, wasn't it? Centro 2015. And I was given a document which said that our aim, our vision is we want a world-class public transport system which is well integrated, well synchronized with all modes. And so I'm not against cars, but I'm here to make sure that we deliver on that vision. And we haven't so far, because our bus network is broken. Our rail system is broken. There's no reliability as far as MT is concerned. Far as I give you a local example from Nuneaton to Coventry to Kenilworth and Leamington is 1 hour service, and most of the time is cancelled and people travel by coaches. So I'm not trying to attack Mayor or you, but what I'm saying is people like me look up to you. Very people who are dedicated and committed, and our officers are, and yet we not seem to be delivering something that which is reliable, which is people can say, yes, I can leave my car at home and get a bus and go to work, or go to school, or go to see friends or doctors or shopping. Recently, I give you an example. The government given us £80 million BSEP money. £40 million now is gone to operators to safeguard the present network. And it seems we lost it now. We lost £40 million for a year. It will be gone to shareholders. What we left, that money was to improve the bus network, to provide more passenger information, to put the physical infrastructure in, to make it more reliable, more affordable. And it seems we're just working on broken system, just day to day, year to year. When are we going to deliver that vision which I stated in my questions?
Sorry, I missed the time you were appointed to Central.
2015.
In 2015, you haven't had much of an input into Centro from there on Transport for West Midlands, if you believe that they haven't delivered. I trust you will hold them to account, put their feet to the fire. But the £40 million is not lost. In actual fact, the £40 million was there to make sure that the services continued, whether they were at the level you would have liked. But the other alternative was that they would have disappeared. And as a result, that was something that we, as an authority, could not support. Everybody would like the bus to be on time. I agree with that. I understand that majority of trains now, I think the last figure I saw was about 95% of trains were on time. Yes, it's always frustrating. I used to travel to London 3 days a week, and there's nothing worse than getting to the station and finding the trains disappeared because I was 2 minutes late. But having said that, I think it is important to understand that maintaining the service of bus and rail comes at an exceptionally high cost. And the private operators have to make a profit whether they like it or not. I disagree with you saying that the 40 million is lost. That 40 million was to ensure that the transport system, however broken it is, was maintained at that level.
So once again, I emphasize that why us 1 more year or maybe 2 years? We're back to square one. So we need to find a permanent long-term funding solution. And that solution, I would say, my colleagues will ask, the elephant is in the room, is this deregulation? And I leave that, some of my other colleagues will ask you a question on that.
Well, whether I agree with the monopoly of bus and train operators, the short answer is no, because our competition is certainly something that I would support. But if you're advocating that we renationalise the whole of the rail and bus industry, I'm sorry, I'm not with you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Sorry. Any other questions? See none, I should move on. Question 6, the delivery of the Wednesbury to Brierley Hill. That's a Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Bird. One of the things that's troubling me at the present moment is the length of time it's taking actually to get this service into Dudley. So my question to you is, the delivery of the Wednesbury to Brierley Hill Metro extension, what assurances has the Westminster Combined Authority received from the government that it will fully fund the outstanding construction works on the Wednesbury to Brierley Hill Metro line, following the cancellation of HS2? And also, if I may ask, what time scale do you anticipate the extension to take before the line will be open to the public? And I must emphasise at this point, Councillor, the bad effect it's having on Dudley Town Centre and its traders. Not only have we got this on our doorstep at the moment, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, there's a bit there, and nothing actually joined up. And taking into account my visit to Wolverhampton and seeing how long it took to get the metro line across Piper's Road, which was about 6 years, I've yet to think what devastating effect this will have on Dudley Town Centre. And could you please take into consideration, when you address this question, that the Dudley bus station is being refurbished at the same time, and it's going to cause us a huge headache of dealing with both things and retaining trade within the town. The town is suffering very, very badly. And really speaking, one assurance is that if we've got the money we've been asking for to finish the line, how can it be done? So what is the time that you expect it will take to finish that extension from Wednesbury to Dudley and then from Dudley to Brierley Hill? It is crucial that we get some sort of answers with the devastating effect it's having on us at the present moment.
Well, when you attribute the lack of metro going to Dudley is the reason for the decline in your town centre, I think that would be bit sort of a tall ask because every town centre is struggling, mine and every town centre in general. We all do it. We go to the shop, look at it, we touch it, we feel it, we get the price for it and go back and order it on the internet. And as a result, we get it delivered and the old one taken away. If you say you don't do that, I'll be very surprised. But town centres in general are struggling. The short answer to the first question in relation to the funding of the metro line, yes, it is fully funded. I understand that what was the figure from the government?
So there's 60 million
60 million.
do look, and then there's additional money that's come through the HS2
Yeah.
programme.
So the short answer to that question, yes, it's funded in full. It will be achieved. Whether the timescale will be achieved, I've never known yet a transport scheme that comes in on time and on budget. But having said that, it's probably a 3-year programme before that finally gets done. I look at the slogan from PJ Duxley, who I know quite well. We won't be here for long, but the improvements will be here for long after. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I do believe that, although I was never a fan of the Metro going to Brierley Hill, I was persuaded by the leader of Dudley that it was an imperative part of the programme that, well, it was a red line when the Labour leader of Dudley signed up to the combined authority. One thing I do is keep respect and loyalty, and I stand by what was put forward then. And as a result, it's taken time, mainly because of cost, but the costs will no doubt overrun because of inflation in materials. I think it is a 3-year plan, is it not?
So then the first extension, which is currently under construction into Dudley Town Centre, has probably got 12 to 18 months to run before that opens. So now that we're in 2 phases, and then subject to all the business cases for the money that has come forward, I think you're right. We're looking at a 3 to 4 year programme for the rest.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Question 7 then is in relation to the bus network. You have made comments, like in terms of hydrogen, but specifically hydrogen buses.
It's coming from me again, Mike. Pleased to hear you're a fan of hydrogen. I'm very much myself, although I do think there are significant challenges around the production of it, particularly green hydrogen, because the government's current target, 10 gigawatts, would require getting on for half of all the offshore wind generated electricity in order to generate that, and that would undermine the plans to decarbonise the electricity grid. So there are challenges around it. The cost of hydrogen at the moment is very, very expensive. But nonetheless, we've got 20 buses currently. There's another 124, I think, on order from Northern Ireland. So we are going to be rolling these buses out onto the network. There will need to be another fueling station to supplement the one at Tyseley. The one at Tyseley actually is a bit hit and miss at the moment as to whether it's supplying. So what are the plans then to, first of all, provide another fueling facility? And then are there any plans to try and stimulate the broader market, to try and bring more hydrogen fueling stations into the West Midlands region, which then would make it much more feasible for other people to purchase hydrogen vehicles?
I think much of the legacy of hydrogen, or the inception of hydrogen, needs to be commended to yourself, Ian, because you had the foresight to look at it, and as a result we saw hydrogen buses coming in, and indeed into the Black Country. It was always the thought that when the Clean Air Zone was introduced, we get all the dirty buses, but we didn't get all of them, we got some clean ones too. I think that the hydrogen stations, without a shadow of a doubt, don't always have to be on public land. I think that certainly public transport will rely upon public land and will rely upon hydrogen stations being built on that public land. But when it comes to what I believe will be the increase in hydrogen, I think they will. Somebody's got to see the market very much like petrol stations and say, you know, it could be a lost leader for 12 or 18 months, but I do believe that we've got to encourage that. But again, we've got to say that it is an alternative. There is little, as far as I've seen, news about hydrogen And as a result, we've got I think we ought to be doing from Transport for West Midlands point of view, is to show the success that we've had with hydrogen buses and show them to be zero emissions at the tailpipe, but more importantly, how reliable it is. But to do that is the first hydrogen bus station that we open, so the filling station that we open, we should be shouting loud and hard, this is one of the ways forward, not all of the ways forward, but it then goes towards an integrated strategy of fuel and transport going forward. I certainly believe that the market will come forward. Maybe we should, certainly there was some research being done by Matt Croton about where we could put hydrogen filling stations, and I have to say I'm not up to speed as to where that is yet.
The next one, Mike, I think is going to be in a bus depot, but it'll be a bus depot that's going to be purchased by the combined authorities, understanding, because you wouldn't want to put the fueling station into the hands of a commercial operator. That would be a mistake, obviously. So I think that's the case. Perhaps you could confirm that. And then secondly, have we got a timetable for the rollout of these other 124 buses?
Actually, the first question is yes, there is a hydrogen bus station being programmed for Walsall. I didn't have any input into that, but I'm glad to hear it. With regards to the buses that were ordered, I think, Anne, I'll have to defer to you on that.
The buses haven't been ordered yet, Councillor Ward. They're all part of the Zebra project that we're running with National Express and with DFT as well. 100 hydrogen buses and 24 sprint buses, which will be electric, just to confirm.
So if they've not been ordered yet, is there any indication of when they will be ordered, and how long will it take before we begin to see them deployed on the network once they are ordered?
Well, that's going to take some time. I'll have to come back to you with the key dates around that, because we're working through the programme with National Express and with DFT as well. So I haven't got the exact answer that year after, so, but certainly we'll come back with the programme information.
Well, if I can pick up this point, because really Councillor Byrne is very favourable in developing hydrogen. I think that would give a push. I'm surprised to hear that those buses have yet to be ordered. So that gives an indication of, in terms of a timescale of about 5 years. So am I right? Am I wrong? Because it does seem to me that we need to prove that hydrogen works. Public transport is the best way.
It's like all transport projects, it's all subject to successful business cases with the Department for Transport, so that you're able to draw the money down in order to make the orders as well. The business cases are being worked through, and this is a partnership with National Express as well, don't forget. So we are trying to stimulate the private industry in coming forward with the vehicles and coming forward with the refuelling technology, and the whole project itself covers the refuelling station in Walsall and the conversations that we've been having around Walsall Depot as well. So I don't think 5 years is the right timescale, but I wouldn't want to be held to a timescale. It's not as long as that, but I certainly bring back the programme information to this committee and the date.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, you mentioned about Walsall, obviously mentioned about Birmingham, and all those buses for all of the West Midlands, and how many would go to, say, Wolverhampton?
So that there are 100, the intention is 100 hydrogen buses on top of the ones that already have. They are for the bus network overall. How and where they will be deployed remains to be seen, but they're not just for being in Walsall. They will be part of the network. As you know, buses from Walsall come all the way through to Birmingham, and with some of the changes that we've got through the cross-city bus network, we're also rerouting some of those buses for longer network as well. So all the way from the Black Country through to Coventry, for example.
We'll find out what the range of a bus once filled with hydrogen is, because I don't know. Do you know?
Off the top of my head, no, but it's not longer than electric.
Ah, right, okay. Well, obviously, the buses with the first filling station, as I'm aware of, going into Walsall, will mean that, as I say, the buses cross city, cross town, will fill up there. But, you know, it's very much like a petrol station. You don't have to have it on your doorstep to go and fill up. You fill up when you, at the end of the day, or beginning of the day, or a weekend, whatever.
I think what we'll do on this one is call for a paper to come to TDOS as soon as possible, to have an understanding of where we are with hydrogen buses and answer the questions that have been raised. Because, like yourself, Mike, I think this is a very, very positive way forward. Thank you.
Chairman, and what I can say is this, I don't know, but Anne will no doubt make a note of what I'm going to say, is that whether in actual fact we've got money allocated for electric buses, which could be passported over to get those hydrogen buses quicker. I've already made it clear that's a priority to me rather than electric, because I think it is the way forward.
It will be based on that business case. Yeah. Okay, next item then is bus franchising, and I've got Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that the West Midlands Combined Authority Board will shortly be asked to consider a report regarding bus delivery options. What are your views on the merits of the West Midlands Combined Authority introducing bus franchising?
Bus franchising, of course, is only works if the franchisee is able to make a profit. And whilst colleague to the right here says they go back to their shareholders, that's right, because that's where their money comes from. I think what we do have to do, and I would certainly be supporting this, is to move away from the monopoly that National Express have had over the many years. And as a result, that is a discussion to have with NX and the officers of the West Midlands Combined Authority. It cannot be right when somebody can turn around and say, by the way, we're going to cut your services by 40%. And us have to say, oh, thanks very much for telling us. You know, I think we've got to look at alternative ways and alternative provision for franchisees to make a profit out of public transport. And as a result, that will send a clear message to NX that I'm sorry, you're not the only person in the game. This is a competitive market. And the only thing with a franchisee, he has to have certainty. You can't just say you can have a trip franchise for 12 months. It has to be for an extended period of time so that people can put that investment into rolling stock, whatever that might be, whether it be rail or bus. And as a result, know that they could get a return from that investment. So I wait to see what the devil's in the detail with regard to franchising, but I think we've got to move away from people having a monopoly over transport and hope that we've got to our heads at any time.
So it's no to re-regulation, but possibly franchising. The question in my mind, when in the past we've looked at this or given it consideration, it's along the lines of, well, nobody's done it, there's too many difficulties with going down this path. But actually it has been done now. Manchester with B now have gone down this path of franchising. So there are lessons to be learned from them, and you'd be looking to make contact with the mayor on this to understand and how best to implement that in the West Midlands.
Manchester, without doubt, has a far better integrated transport than most places in the country. And as a result, like I said earlier, why do we have to reinvent the wheel? What we should do is go to say where something worked and worked well. And you're quite right, Chair, that we can learn from the mistakes that they encountered and as a result not replicate those mistakes. But I think there's not beyond the wit of man for our mayor and or our senior officers or both to go and talk to Manchester saying, how did you manage this? Because we can then see the pitfalls that they achieved success on, and as a result learn from that. But I certainly think that's a great idea.
Okay, so after.
That's fine. Thank you. And thank you for being very honest in your previous question. You made it very clear. You're not for a, that you are not for a nationalization. But sir, I tell you, I'm not for privatization and the deregulation outsourcing, because I think the private sector is ripping up our taxpayers' money without delivering the services now. So in many times in rail franchising, they have gave it back to the government, and government took it, made it profitable, and then gave it back to private sectors. And sometimes I feel they are just push money and services into pockets of their funders and rich friends. Now, my question on this, is it any way you can ask the government to make the process simple and less expensive as far as franchising is concerned? And also, sir, in 2017 Bus Act, the government has made it, it doesn't allow to for local authorities to have corporate buses like Nottingham and Reading, which are very successful. What's your view about that, or what you're going to do about that?
I've always been lobbying government, whoever that might be, because more money is going to produce more effective policy. Having said that, I do believe that if you were to look at going back to re-regulating buses and trains, quite honestly, I think it's an uphill battle that you're not going to win. I go back to when they were nationalised, if you like, and as a result, we suffered more disruption then than we do now, because the disruption can be limited by any franchisee by the fact that, coming back to the very fact that they are responsible to their shareholders, they have to make sure that they return those profits for the investment they've made. I think that there should be, all options should be considered. If it means we have a local bus service in Walsall run by a local company, I see no reason why that shouldn't work. Likewise across the country. But if it works elsewhere, like I said earlier, we can import it from there and see how the model works in our particular environment.
About asking the government to make it less expensive, the process?
Happy to do that, Anne.
Yes.
I can tell them that. Probably won't listen, but we'll ask them anyway.
What's the process? You will write to them, you'll let us know?
Of course, we will write to the Ministry of Transport saying, can you simplify the process for franchising? And as a result, can we have a reply in writing as soon as possible so that my scrutiny committee can look and see what you've got to say?
And so also, can you write to the National Express or the bus companies so we can have a dialogue with them that how we can make the process easier?
I think I'd wait till I get the reply from the government first. I constantly battle with my officers in Walsall about contracts that go out. I weighed one a few weeks back. It weighed £5 in weight. That any small business, when they look at that, say, oh, I'm not going to bother with that, straight in the bin. That's the problem we've got. The restrictions of procurement from local authorities is a barrier to any small business or any entrepreneur coming forward.
The next sector that is on the, I beg your pardon, the final question on this section is reliability of the bus network. And that's Councillor McGarity.
Thank you, Chair. This question came about because you get a lot of these ghost buses. You think a bus is coming in 2 minutes, then it disappears, and then it might come again in another 20 minutes. So that's where this question sort of come from. So behaviour change is important, but to enable members of the public to use public transport as an alternative to the car, it needs to be reliable. What are your thoughts on the reliability of the current bus network, and how do you believe this could be improved?
Ghost buses in Halloween are probably very popular. But having said that, I think one of the issues, you're quite right, in as much that transport, public transport, how many times have I heard, very much like wards councils, really, you can't get one, all of a sudden you get 3 in a row. But I see the X51 and the 51 bus coming down the Birmingham Road in Walsall, and sometimes there's 2 or 3 bunched together. And whether that's because of road traffic conditions or whether in actual fact it's because of some other impediment that they've inherited on the way. I think what is important to see is that the indication in bus shelves saying when the next bus is due is live, and as a result it does give people the opportunity, very much like going to New Street Station and finding your train's gone or cancelled. But at least you know where you stand. Whether you like it or not is another matter. But I think the more we can actually roll out live communication to our users of public transport, the better. And the more we can capture the people that vandalise them even more better, if that's a word. But I think that certainly we need to have those consultations with bus operators. What we are doing, there is more and more improvements to road network by way of more bus lanes, by way of giving more green time to buses to enable them to be more accurate in their timetables that are published. But I do believe the first thing we have to do is to invest more in live communication to see that the passengers know when that bus is going to come and when in actual fact it will arrive.
I think the live communication is really important, so that people know where they are, when it's going to turn up, if it's not going to turn up. So at least, as you say, with the train, if it's cancelled, you know where you are, but with the bus, waiting on the GOES bus, even if it is Halloween.
Nothing worse than get to a bus stop in the pouring snow at 7:30 in the morning to find out the bus is not coming, and then it's 9 o'clock before the next one. It's pretty cold. David.
Yes, Councillor, I also encounter the same problems with the real-time information. As I look around, you know what I mean, it sort of drops off the screen and you never know when the next one's going to turn up. I think as an organisation, we should look at ourselves completely and see if we can get this system right so that people out there waiting for buses know exactly when to expect one or not to expect it. It is a big worry, a big concern, especially the elderly this time of the year in the cold weather, standing out there waiting for a bus that never turns up. So it is, I agree with the council's comments down there. We really seriously should be looking at that as a major supplier of the bus industry within the area. It is a huge concern. Now, I've also experienced a lot of problems, not only with the buses not turning up, but the condition of some of the operators when the buses are actually breaking down and do not complete the journey. Thank you.
I think that I can't comment whether there is such a facility available. If you go onto your mobile phone, as most people have nowadays, the train line, you know, it's a simple app. It tells you where the train is, whether it's on time, what platform it's going to go to, or whether it's coming or not. Now, I think that National Express are missing a trick here, because it would be so easy to go onto your app and say, oh, I'm going to go to my bus. Oh, bloody hell, it's not coming, or it's 10 minutes late. Now, this is live information. I'm sure that most of you use Trainline. I have. Not as I go on the train very often, but I do, as Ian does. But saying that, I think that the investment doesn't have to always come from us. It needs to come from the bus operator. And if National Express hadn't got such an app, then maybe they should have. And I think I've
Just
it
tells you when the next bus is coming tomorrow.
Oh, there you go.
Stuff that I used this morning.
far be it from me to learn something.
So the real-time information is a really complex lot of data and all the stuff that goes behind the scenes, and we can bring back to Scrutiny Mike Waters, who's sitting over there as well, myself and others within this organisation working with our bus operators are really trying to solve this particular problem. We don't have good information when buses get cancelled or a bus breaks down, the time it takes for that information to come through. The same structure that exists around the rail network does not happen in the bus network. We've also got other things coming forward. We do have real-time information on our stops and on the TFWM app at the moment. Also it appears in other things that people use like Google and so on. It's all fed by APIs, so data coming in. It's how do we make sure that the data that's coming in is accurate, particularly where you get disruption to the network or where a bus breaks down or a bus is cancelled or there's a driver not turned up for work that day, for example. And that is something that we are working on to try to do that. I think one of the things that we need to do is tell people what the issues are and what we're doing to address them and how long it's going to take before that information starts to improve, and a little bit of just intelligence about how to access the information and to make sure that you can make a decision about whether you're going to go to the bus stop for that bus or not, or whether you can leave in another 10 minutes or so.
I think that's important. Again, it comes back to communication. I wasn't aware that app existed for buses. I knew very well it works for trains, but I think it is a matter of educating through our local authorities, through our community associations, to turn around and say, this is available to you. If you rely on public transport, then effectively, most people have got a mobile phone if they've got nothing to eat. I know that sounds awful, but it's a fact. So let's actually move along those lines.
I stand quickly, the information's picked up by, sorry, the information's picked up by Google on in directions and that, you see where it thinks the bus is at that time, which is going to what's the standard of the data. Can we for us?
For the sake of the record then, the app is,
It's Transport for West Midlands is the app, but it's available, there are other apps available which tell you the real-time information. It all feeds off the same core data into each of the different apps as well. And I think Councillor McCarthy's just said it's about getting the information right that feeds into the central database.
I use that app. It's not very accurate because the data that it relies on is inaccurate. I think Mike is correct that the solution to this is for the operators to invest in the technology on the vehicle that gives the real-time information. Now, Uber, the taxi app, can do it.
Yeah.
There's no reason the bus operators couldn't do it. They're clearly, or I was supposed to say clearly, that they are not at the moment investing the money to make that happen, but they clearly could if they chose to do so. So I do think Mike's right, and they ought to be put under pressure to bring that technology on board the vehicle.
Yeah, I think that's a good point here, and as a result, I'd be committed to say if we can make that happen, if it means we've got to put some investment from Transport for West Midlands to make that happen by way of our cash going in it, why wouldn't we? It's a bit of a no-brainer because the intellectual property then would be partly owned by us. So if a franchisee were to come in, we could actually build in the fact that they could use that technology, and I think it's very important to do so. Every one of us around this room will know, I know where my bin wagons are every day, purely because they have that technology in the cab. Why can't we do that? And I think that's something we take from this meeting to ensure that we write to TfWM and say, look, we need you to do this. What's it going to cost?
okay, I was beginning to think, actually, I'm sorry, Emma, you were coming.
That's okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask about demand responsive transport, as we're talking about technology and reliability. Bromsgrove, they've done a year-long trial of demand responsive transport, and it's been so successful that the service is oversubscribed. We're at the point that maybe need to put on another vehicle for the demand responsive transport. So I wanted to see what your opinions are of that, and if you see that being part of the different models of bus service along the West Midlands.
I think one of the things we're not very good at, not we as Transport for West Midlands, but the bus operators, is knowing what their customers want, and whether they can provide it. I think you've given a classic example. The data fed into the system says we need an extra bus on here. And I think that works well on Network Rail and the wider rail network around the country. But certainly, as I said earlier, if it's working elsewhere, why would we reinvent the wheel? Why don't we go and say, what's working good there? Can we transport that back in? So I'm happy for you, if you could give the details to Anne, then we'll follow that up.
This may be another item then for TDOS to pick up and have an understanding of working together with an added value that we want to take advantage of. So I think I'll call for another paper, and quite right, Mike, this is something that we could work together on. Thank you for that. Raise that question. The next section then is community. I've got Councillor Lowe.
This is about the refreshed regional road strategy 2023 to 2030. Following the launch of the refreshed road strategy, can you please provide details on how this will be monitored and evaluated? What role might overview and scrutiny have in assessing the effectiveness of this new strategy?
Well, I looked at the road safety strategy that I've given, and quite honestly, the main focus, quite rightly, was to reduce the deaths of pedestrians and everything else that goes with that. I think it is important when we look at the reduction in deaths from pedestrians and road traffic accidents. But again, come back to one of my pet subjects. A lot of this, the illegal use of electric scooters contribute quite highly towards those deaths and serious injury. The monitoring obviously is not down to me, but the officers will see how they collect that data. I think I'll defer to answer that because I genuinely don't know.
The road safety strategy has been refreshed with the new targets that we've got. And we're in the process with all of the officers from each of the local authorities and West Midlands Police in putting the action plan that will sit behind that, which will come back to the Combined Authority Board and obviously to EDOS as well. And that will set out, these are the key actions that are going to be taken by all of the partners that are involved in helping to reduce killed and serious injuries on our road network to all vulnerable road users, and that will have a set of monitoring information with it as well. So that's a work in progress, and we're doing that collaboratively with all of the local authority, road safety officers and West Midlands Police and others.
Chair, could I ask that maybe a paper be brought to DDoS?
I think Anne said that.
Yeah.
Yes, but just confirmed.
I think local authorities have a big part to play into this because obviously some of this could be changing the road network locally, maybe resulting in some planning regulations. But at the end of the day, I think that certainly the role of Transport for West Midlands is to collect that information from local authorities to make sure that the strategy is common across the whole of the West Midlands.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions. Moving on then to the next question in terms of community buy-in, and that's Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. But yes, at the end of the day, all of what we're doing is all about the end user. It's about the people, you know, people of the West Midlands who want to be able to get around. So how are you ensuring that Transport for West Midlands is really engaging the voice of the communities and making sure that everything we're doing will actually have the outcomes we desire, meeting their needs?
I think there are two ways to attract the attention of the people, bus users and transport users, is reliability and cost. And those two things are certainly paramount for somebody to make the decision to use public transport. How we get that message across is difficult, not only for us, but for all local authorities. We're not very good in Walsall of communicating with people. Everybody seems to use social media now, and just for the record, this bird don't tweet. I don't do social media at all. And as a result, we need to cater for the people who do not use social media, but people, elderly people, the elderly branch of people who are probably going to be more customers in that age gap, bracket, I should say, than the youngsters of today. Now, the youngsters of today will probably walk more than the elderly people. You know, when you get old, it's difficult to walk. But at the end of the day, I do believe that we've got to communicate through all sections of the community, advertising. Community associations in Walsall, for instance, are very much one of the mediums that we use for paper-based communication. When a community association, my own in VC, has got 1,600 people a week that go through that community association. And if Fred or Lethal aren't there one week, somebody says, "Where's Fred Neville?" And they go out and see, "Oh, where's Fred Neville?" Knock on the door. So I think there has to be a dual approach. One is social media, which everybody seems to think is the only way forward. No, I don't agree with that. I do believe we need to have some paper-based system for those people who want to read things. It's like when I go somewhere, it says card only. I grew up with coins of the realm and, you know, portraits of the Queen, now the King. And if you ain't got the money in your pocket, you can't spend it. But I do believe that we have to look at paper-based transactions and communication, which is something we've moved away from in all areas of communication. Do you want to tell them?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that we do in order to understand what people think about the transport system. So annually, we'll do a survey of local people as part of that. We get some good feedback in terms of how people look at the different modes of transport, what they think about the service that's being provided, etc. So we've got that monitoring in place, and then nationally, Transport Focus do this for DFT as well, so that we can take sort of like those pulse surveys and see how we are performing as part of this region. I think last week social media is used to sort of help sort of promote the services that we provide. We even created a TikTok account and launched that last week as well to try and get to some of our younger audience and new users of transport systems as well. And that gives them sort of day-to-day information about what's happening on the transport system. And we are trying to make sure that we are pushing as much information out as well. And of course, as we do the investment programme, we also do the usual engagement with communities so that they can have input into the new things that we're constructing as part of those investments, as well as consultation, which follows the statutory processes as well, to make sure that we can bring those changes forward as well. So there's lots of different touch points that we have with all of our different communities. Some communities are harder to reach than others, and we do work really closely with all of our local authorities, particularly their communication teams, to try to get to as many communities as possible, to give the different kinds of messages, whether it's we're investing in this, we want your input, or these are the services that are being provided, we want your feedback.
I think again, we need to also take on board the operators, because at the end of the day, it's the person's experience of the day that can be fed back into the central system. We used to have years ago, when I was a lad, which is probably many years ago, we used to have a suggestions box, and those that you could actually print were quite useful in some cases. But at the end of the day, I do think the engagement from the operators, which is really, as I say, they don't really communicate much with the passengers that they're serving. And I think they're leaving it to us to do that, but it isn't, it's a joint event.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We're on to the last question now, Mike, and it's customers' comments stroke complaints. And that's Councillor McCarthy.
I'm sure you'll agree that, Lead Member, that getting usable feedback from our customer base is key. One thing that I've noticed when dealing with issues with residents is that there isn't a really easily usable portal. Well, I haven't managed to find it. So, and I think that if we did get to a decent web-based portal, it doesn't mean that certainly all people can't use it, because the way that people use our local authorities services that don't have a computer is they go down to their local library.
Yeah.
Now, local libraries actually provide a range of services for people who are not that computer literate. Sometimes it helps them get more literate because they're offered locally, and sometimes there are people there that will help them just get onto something, say, don't need an account or anything, go onto the web, make their issue or complaint so that the feedback is done. Are we actually working on getting a decent portal? Because local authorities have them, housing associations have them these days that deal with the same groups.
We do have our customer team, that the telephone line, as well as online ways in which people can send us information. It does exist. I would say our website is not the best, so that is something that we are reviewing to make sure that's easily accessible. There's all sorts of standards around that as well, but we do have a customer complaints team, which we also use as the main contact centre when we're doing the other consultations and engagement pieces that I've just mentioned as well. So there is a whole load of information intelligence that comes in. People are able to make their comments, complaints, or even if they want to say something more positive as well. So it is collected, and we do have that sort of intelligence around that as well. You can do it online, but I would say it's not the easiest. So we are trying to see how we can do that. And if there's something that we could do with our local authorities where you already have this, how can we add some transport stuff into there that can be collected by our local authority colleagues and supplied to us as well, rather than just being a TFWM maybe for that as well.
I think it's a good point. When we are paying hundreds of thousands of pounds into TFWM from local authorities, then we ought to know whether our money is being spent well. I go back to the point when I used to have my first business, and I used to say to the girls on the phone, when somebody rings up to place an order, ask the question, where did you see our name? And they couldn't understand why. Well, I just wanted to know where the money I was putting into advertising was making progress. So I think that's a good point, and we can have a section on each particular council's website. And then all it is what I call the whiteboard, where you get the query, which is forwarded on to you, you answer it.
Yeah, could you send us out the link so that we can look at it in its current form? And we can also approach our constituents and say, how does this link
Well, for
together.
you, yeah.
Because at the moment, most of the residents have got back to me, have used the telephone system, and they've usually reached an impasse somewhere, and they said, "Oh, I'll talk to my local council," and the person will do this, don't bother, because we don't listen to them. And I've heard that 7 or 8 times. So I think we need a better portal that starts to accept and respect people's views and use them.
Thanks, Martin. Part of the question though was on consultation with the public. It's acknowledged that perhaps it could be better, but how do you see future consultation in helping develop our transport priorities from the public?
Well, property's on my toe, thinking of while I'm here, I can see nothing wrong with having some kind of a terminal in the bus stations, which enables you to go and access that terminal and tell people what you think. You know, sometimes the answer to the question is no, whether people like it or not. You know, I mean, I'm renowned for saying, you know, I go to a meeting and somebody, I ask a question, they give me something that doesn't seem to be true. So look, if the answer is I don't know, the answer is I don't know. Don't fabricate it. But I think if we had an opportunity where there was a portal which was in a safe place, where people could go and express their views, if not by them personally entering the detail, but somebody there who could assist them in saying exactly what they thought. What was your experience today, so to speak? Invariably, it's somebody who's had bad experience, but those are the ones that, you know, direct you towards making change. Because if you got a mistake and you put it right, that's far better than being told, oh, everything's going well, you know.
No, I see no more hands, so item 6 on the agenda is closing remarks from yourself and myself. So, over to you.
Chairman, can I just thank you and the members around the room who have given me fair insight into what their thoughts are. What you see with me is what you get, whether you like it or not. As people who know me well enough, well, that's the way it is. You know, I've been doing this job for just over 40 years now as an elected member. I've been the leader of Walsall for over 15 years during that period. But having said that, one thing I do is listen to what you've got to say. You might not like the answer, but I will go back and look at everything that you've raised today and make sure that we get you an answer. Sometimes it might be no, but at the end of the day, for those who've worked with me over the years, they do know my frank and openness doesn't always fall in everybody's feet to say that's the way to go forward. My own monitoring office got a filing cabinet for me because, you know, sometimes people don't like the way you say it, but it has to be said, whether that be a company, whether it be an elected member, whether it be an officer. We're here to do the job, and that's my job. I'm thankful today for the courtesy you've offered me, the questions you've put forward, and I will give you my undertaking that officers will now come back to you with what you've raised today, and as a result, get you some progress on transport for West Midlands. I didn't ask for the portfolio. The mayor was very kind to give it me, and one day I'll get my own back. But at the end of the day, it is a steep learning curve, and I will have to say, and I place on record in the minutes, Chairman, that the work that Ian Ward did on this transport portfolio has allowed me a solid base to work from, and I thank Ian for that. We've worked together over the years. There is never a place to be, which is a good place when you're an elected member. People always want to have a go at you for what you didn't do rather than what you did do.
Thank you.
Like you said, you're a full and frank type person, and I think we welcome that because quite clearly, oh, and by the way, whilst you were given this role, transport has a habit of creating an enthusiasm, and you've heard passion this morning from members about transport. Transport has that habit, and some interesting points have been raised this morning, and I thank you for the answers you've given us and the opportunities that we can take away, because quite clearly there are some areas that we need to look at as scrutiny and offer further advice to yourself, Mike, and the mayor. So thank you for the time that you've given. I will close the meeting there, but ask members to stay behind because we do need to have a brief conversation, and we've got some 10 minutes less. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So, yeah.
Yeah.